Hello and welcome to Day Drinking with Ace, a podcast by our agency Ace Influencers, where we discuss influencer culture and all kinds of updates and gossip about the industry. I'm joined here by Erica, who's our social media manager.
Hi.
And we're going to be discussing why it's so important to have a strong personal brand and a bit of a social media presence if you want to get a job in social media.
And basically how to get one by leveraging your social media.
Yes.
You look like you could use a drink.
I mean, we both realistically have an experience with this. You
Yeah.
obviously got a job as a social media manager.
Woo!
And before I founded Ace, I actually also had a few jobs as a social media manager or as a creative director. And I always used to put my social media in my CV, and I always tried to kind of keep a curated aesthetic for it.
You were also a personal trainer, which also requires having a social media presence.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, I think that gone are the days where social media is for fun or it's okay to post whatever if you want to work in marketing or in socials or anything media related.
Yeah, to be fair though, you can also have like the classic feed now that you see where people just kind of photo dump all over their feed and it just looks aesthetic. That does appeal to some brands, but I do think it's gone are the days where you can just like post once every 2-3 months and just like post a photo of you and your family or things like that. I think that's basically dead.
I mean, from my perspective, I would not trust to hire someone for my company's social media if they don't even have a bit of a presence with their own social media. How can you see that they love it? If you love it and you want to create content, surely you would do it for your own socials too.
Yeah, and one of the funny things is trying to hire for a social media intern, I've asked people for their portfolios, but obviously a portfolio doesn't tell you everything because people will do like really curated content they've done for businesses, and that's not necessarily what we're looking for. And the interesting thing is when I ask people for their personal social media, you would be surprised the amount of people that either say they don't have like a personal TikTok, for instance, or their personal Instagram is actually on private. And then the people that do have their social media on public, their feeds are not giving. And I mean, I get it when it is your job or it's been your job in the past and things like that, you kind of don't want to do it for your personal because it feels like work.
And it's kind of tiring to keep up with your job and your own feed and everything like that. But realistically, I think that it comes with the job description.
Yeah, and I think that one of the big things now is that because company social media is getting more and more personal, what I've been looking for is I want somebody who they can do personal content. Because if they can do personal content for themselves, that means they can do personal content for business.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to look really slick.
No, and it's true. I feel like businesses are moving away from the very curated business first content. And let's be honest, it's really boring. It's really boring to see, this is our office, this is our product, this is our social media manager headshot. It's just really boring. So I think that actually seeing personalities of people that work in a team or how, processes are created, that's where the fun is. And I think that speaking on camera and showing up is actually not that easy.
Yeah, so the task I've been giving everyone is basically to do a what's in your bag and then also to do one where they're critiquing a business's Instagram, but both are basically just to see how people actually talk on camera and how they film themselves speaking on camera.
Yeah. So when you were applying for a job at Ace, what did you do to prepare? They're excited to find out, actually.
I mean, there's a multitude of things that I did. Number one was I wanted to make sure that I looked the part because I'd gone from blonde with extensions to blonde with short hair to brunette to like not really caring about my social media, all this sort of stuff. Then I was like, okay, when I was applying for jobs, I was like, okay, well, you kind of have to like look the part.
How do you know what the part is?
I think you know what the part is depending on what kind of social media manager, for instance, you want to present yourself as. So if you want to be a social media manager for a business, for instance, where you're potentially going to be on camera, you want to make sure that you fit the vibe of that. So I was applying to basically a lot of like beauty related things, fashion, because ultimately I thought, okay, that would just be a fun job to work as a social media manager for a fashion company or a beauty company. But along with that basically means that you kind of have to look like you belong in the beauty and fashion world. So that means like showing that you can do your makeup really nicely, for instance, on Instagram, showing that your hair can look good, showing a little bit of your personality, like what you like doing for fun, showing that you're sociable, that you have connections to things, show that you're really well integrated into London, because like a part of that, for instance, is like going out, because in the beauty and fashion world, a lot of it is socializing. So if you
networking, talking, meeting new people.
Yeah. So I didn't feel as though like that was something I needed to hide from my social media, so to speak. I almost felt like it was something you have to put forward more, because people will look at your feed, and if they see that you're a fun, sociable person, ultimately everything in social media is a little bit of a personality hire.
Yeah, to be honest, I 100% agree, because if you think about it, in most companies, the social media manager will firstly need to convince everyone to participate in socials. Yeah. Which can be a bit difficult.
It can be very difficult.
I mean, we've had, even in ACE, in the beginning, some people were like, oh gosh, it's not a part of my job, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So it can be a little bit of a hurdle where you have to get everyone on board, make it fun.
Yeah, you have to make it fun. That's the biggest thing. If you're going to be asking other people to be in the content you're making, you have to make it fun, and you have to sell it to people and be like, yeah, this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, so I think that if you don't have the personality for that, it's going to be very hard to do your job.
It's going to be really awkward, and then you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, nobody's going to be excited for you, or like nobody's going to want you to succeed at your job either, because let's be real, a lot of people actually don't like the social media managers at the company. Well, I think that's kind of the stereotype, right? Because a lot of people don't want to be in the content. So if it doesn't perform well, people wouldn't be mad at that role disappearing, for instance.
If you want to apply to a particular company, would you look at their aesthetic, or how would you go about finding out what the right vibe is?
I think it depends what the state of the company is when you're coming into it. So let's say they have a really good social media, for instance, and they've got a very defined sort of digital identity. Then, yes, it's really easy to look at it and go, oh, okay, what kind of company is this? What's their vibe? Are they a really clean aesthetic company? Are they sleek? Like if you're working for interior designer, for instance, you kind of know what that sort of person looks like. I think it gets a little bit more difficult if you're working in like a tech company, for instance. Yeah. So then it makes a lot of sense with anything to always go on LinkedIn and look at the people that work there and look at their social medias. Because if you're trying to fit in with people from these companies, you need to look at how you and your Instagram or your social media compares to theirs. So the more similar that it is, the more likely that you'll probably get a job.
What if their aesthetic is just really, really bad, and you feel like, okay, surely I can fit in, I can, be a part of what they are, but it's never going to work? Do you go on the opposite then and bring a different aesthetic in, or do you still try and fit in?
I think you really look at the brief as to what they are looking for.
Yeah. And
then based on that and based on what your idea is for how their social should run, you kind of present that to them. So a lot of times for things, you'll have to do a task, for instance. A lot of times you'll have to show your vision for the company with things. So with that, whatever vibe you think it should go down, if you feel like you match that, then apply for it. If you don't feel like it's ever going to mesh well, honestly, you're better off just not wasting your time. I'm not gonna lie.
So obviously step one is just curating your own social media, and I guess that's more abstract because you're not doing it to a particular company, you're doing it to a niche, I guess.
Yeah.
For you, that was kind of fashion, beauty, presenting yourself as sociable, that you can do your makeup well, you have style, all of those things. And then you kind of, you do. You go towards companies that are in that niche and you approach them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you can always work for a company that's different from you, but it's about what is your best foot forward, and then going for companies where your best foot forward matches their best foot forward. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you are somebody that's, I don't know, like really into streetwear, for instance, right? Like street fashion and everything, I don't think it would make sense to, like, I don't know, work at like a really clean makeup brand or something like that, where like they're exactly, where they're all about just looking very minimalist and just like that sort of, what do they call it, like clean girl aesthetic vibe. That's never going to really be you.
So I guess,
unless you want that, in which case change your vibe and be a chameleon.
Isn't it a little bit like same with designers? They have their own signature vibe. So even when a designer becomes a creative director of a brand, they bring in their own twist. So isn't a social media a little bit like a designer of a digital footprint?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of a brand, I guess. So I think that what you bring in is also who you are.
Yeah, it's a bit like with fashion houses when they get a new designer in.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, oh, okay, like you still have to make it Dior, for instance, but they're bringing in somebody else to put their twist on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, brand will have their own pillars and what's important to them, but how it's shown can be kind of the creativity of a social media manager.
Yeah. I feel like even when it's not just being a social media manager, like even all the influencer managers, right?
Yeah.
Like anything that relates to social media in the least, or where you're going to have to put yourself out there, or the company involves looking at other people's social media. Like, I'm sure you look at everybody's social media and think, are they going to be able to know what's a good influencer?
No, for sure. I mean, as soon as I started hiring people, I had two questions. One of them is like, why do you want to work at Ace?
Yeah.
And the other one was their Instagram. And most times I would look at their Instagram for way longer than their CV. I would skim through their CV, see if they have any type of experience, and then I would go to their Instagram.
Oh my gosh, wait, can we talk about CVs for a second?
Yeah, we can.
Because this is driving me crazy when I've been looking at these CVs for an intern. Everybody doing the like classic black and white, like you're not applying for a job in banking, you're applying to be a social media intern. Have some fun with it. Put some color on there.
It needs to be creative.
Yeah, it needs to be creative. It needs to like pop off the page and show me, oh, you've got some graphic design. Like, oh, you're a little bit fun. Like, kind of needs to represent your personality. And I know that the traditional thing is like black, white, no photo, make it
I don't look at
cookie
those
cutter.
things. I'm not
I don't either.
I open it and I go, boring, in the bin. At least I won't look at it. And I then will look at their Instagram, and if their Instagram doesn't catch my eye in a second, they're gone. I haven't even reviewed what they've done in their life.
And the other funny thing too is I feel like especially when it's a black and white one, and I've seen some where it's like, it's got some really great accomplishments on there and like they've done some cool stuff, but I'm just not interested. Yeah. I'm like, this is really great for you. I'm glad you've been successful in life, but you just don't seem like you've got the vibe.
I also think that obviously as we're moving into direction where a lot more younger generation people will be employers, our attention span is nothing. It's nothing. So if you cannot catch someone's attention in the first few seconds, you have way less of a chance to get a creative job. Because no one is going to analyze all of your stuff like they do for, medicine or banking or law, where it's really important to have super concrete experience. Here it's more about, is this person creative? Do they look cool? Do they fit our vibe? If they don't, it doesn't matter what you've done.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
Yeah.
And the other funny thing is, a lot of people I've been looking at, they don't even have a personal TikTok, or like their TikTok is like meh.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you not have a TikTok though? And a lot of people as well. And I used to think this actually when I was applying to jobs. I thought, ooh, should I start like kind of a professional Instagram to sort of showcase things that I've done, like put information out there, like these are my thoughts on social media and stuff. But now when I've been looking at people and they're like, I don't really use my personal social media, but I have a business one where I share all these things. I'm not gonna lie, it actually makes me also kind of think less of them because a lot of times they're not that strong at graphic design or whatever it is,
Yeah.
or I don't agree with the content, and then I'm like, okay, well, that's it. And also, I really just want to know what you're actually like. I want to know your vibe.
To be honest, for me, all these information texts, things like that, you're obviously getting hired by people that know something about that.
Yeah.
So they're not going to read your post and be like, oh, how interesting.
Yeah, wow.
Ooh, I didn't know that about TikTok. They're just going to be like, oh, boring. So if you cannot tell who a person is, but they're pumping out a lot of information, you could go to ChatGPT for that.
Oh, yeah. You could actually do that.
Yeah.
I think ChatGPT could even make you the actual post now.
Oh yeah, no, it can do anything. So I feel like even more so now it's important to have something really unique that you bring in as a person and a personality into a brand, which again goes back to your personality needs to fit the brand really well.
Now, this is unrelated, but actually, I've been having a think about this for a little while. I actually think that working in social media is one of the few jobs that things like AI not going to replace. And the reason is because every time I ask ChatGPT to even like make me a caption, for instance, I have to give it such clear parameters, and it still doesn't do like a good tone of voice, for instance. Or
and it's behind on trends because it learns, but it doesn't invent.
Yeah, or it's also just not good at actually analyzing somebody's social media. Like it is to a degree, right? But I just don't feel like it's ever going to have it. You know what I mean?
It's not creative in the sense it knows a lot and it can learn a lot, but you cannot learn creativity.
Yeah, exactly. Because all it actually does is it just starts copying other things. And that's really interesting. And also I think it's like you'd have to almost train your own exact AI by putting in all the parameters for like the agency, for instance. And you'd have to be like, oh, like we're looking for all these things, and then also these are the smaller things that we like and that we're looking for. But an AI will never actually be able to get a vibe, basically, which is really interesting. That was a side note.
But it is a great tool, though. It is a great tool for social media managers. So I do think that if you're researching or you want one caption to be reformatted into 100 different ways, sure, it can be a good tool.
The one thing that's always funny to me is it always wants to use so many emojis. Oh, yeah. Like, it's actually really funny how many emojis ChatGPT wants to use. I always find that funny. Yeah.
So what would you say made you ace then? In a sense, what made you an ace social media manager?
Well, I think because I came from like making content myself, then I kind of knew what that experience is like. So then it wouldn't be foreign for me to actually be promoting a company that does that. And I think that in a weird way, if you're going to be doing social media at an influencer agency, you almost kind of need to be an influencer or have been one or like have the look of one in order to fit in. And I think that's really difficult to find because a lot of people that are successful influencers or content creators are not going to just up and decide one day like I did to just like say, nah, no thanks, I'm just going to work for businesses.
I really think that's going to change though.
Yeah, I agree. I think that now the sort of influencers are going to be people that work for companies. But this also actually brings up something that I've thought about, which is like, let's say, which I'm not going to, let's say I left the agency, right?
Don't make me have a heart attack.
But let's say I left, right? But everybody knows, so like, I was working at Ace, and people be like, oh, well, now you're working at this other company, and you're the face of this. But then people associate Ace with whatever new company. Yeah. And that's an interesting new risk for companies. True. Yeah. So in a weird way, if you are going into social media, especially as a social media manager, and you're going to be creating content for a business, you really need to have them be aligned with your personal brand as well, because you're going to be tied to them. Yeah. And if, let's say you start working at, I don't know, like a garbage company. Okay, let's say you start working at a garbage company and you are killing it on their social media and you're like, oh, but like this isn't really me, I want to move on. people might always know you as the person that was the
Worked for
garbage.
But I even think if you think about opposite aesthetics, like take Jaded London and take Abercrombie.
Yeah.
Like you cannot be Jaded London one day and then the next day be Abercrombie. It's too opposite.
Exactly.
So I think that once you decide on the type of aesthetic you bring, you're also a little bit married to that.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. So I think, like when I said, you really need to narrow down on what specific industry or type of company you want to work for. You also should not accept something at a company that is not you.
What if they pay really, really well?
Ooh.
5 million a year.
Okay, well then that's different. Then you become that business. But you know what I mean. Like, realistically, that's not actually going to happen. No. Realistically, you have to go down a path that's true to yourself, and even more so in social media than anything else. Like, I know a lot of people end up going into banking and then they decide that's not them and they leave. But with social media, odds are if you're going into it, it's because you really like social media. The question then is just which industry within it you want to work in. Because you can work in, the cool thing about it is you can work across so many different industries and you can work on so many projects. So you actually really have to niche down.
No, for sure. And just to bring it back to the money, I think that to accept a job that's really not your aesthetic, it has to pay you way more than another job can ever pay.
Yeah.
Because then you're basically, you sold your soul. That's what you're going to do. This is going to be your aesthetic. And if you don't love it, you're going to have to love the money enough to not love your job enough.
Yeah, because honestly, imagine if the other thing too is that it can make it quite difficult to get a job later. Because like I've looked at some people's CVs, for instance, and they've been working at, I don't know, I saw somebody had like worked in an animal shelter or like an Alzheimer's clinic or something like that doing their social media. And I thought, that's really nice. Like, I'm really proud of you for doing that. That's really great. But I just don't see how that translates.
Yeah, or you need to, again, have a very strong personal brand on your social media. Like, if you're really into fashion and you worked at an animal shelter, and that's interesting.
And that's the thing that changes it. This is where this whole thing we've been talking about with your personal social media, that's where it comes into play. Because the one thing that can overcome your professional range of what you've done is your personal social media.
For sure, I agree with this 100%. And again, from an employer point of view, one of the first things I look at, realistically the first, is your social media. And if it's not giving, I don't even look at the CV. I don't. I don't care what you've done. If you cannot have a brand for yourself, how can you understand other brands?
Yeah, and the other thing too is I feel like people that want to be in social media, they need to actually invest. It's about investing in yourself. So part of investing in yourself is like investing in the way that you look, investing in your social media and how all that looks, also investing in your kit. So having the newest iPhone a lot of times, having a laptop that can accommodate no matter what job you end up in. Like sometimes you have to do videography. It doesn't have
to be expensive. There's a lot of things you can get secondhand. There's a lot of things you can get on eBay.
Ask for Christmas.
Ask for Christmas. Or even like you had these TikTok shop lights, which are great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff you can get that's not that expensive when you're starting out.
And also things like the TikTok shop lights and stuff. Those actually compensate so much for a bad iPhone. It's like every time I'm taking a video, especially at home because my lighting's not great at home, I have this little LED, portable LED, and I just pop it on top of my phone. And it changes everything. It makes things look so nice.
And this goes back to research, right? Research kind of what you need to have to start out. Build your personal brand. Make it true to yourself.
Yeah.
And that's really it. And it doesn't have to be super professional because I think that the main thing that brands and employers are looking for is what a person's signature look is or personality, the vibe they bring.
Yeah.
They're not looking for your graphic design skills on your social media.
Yeah, and another thing that I would say, and this is like such a big tip now to anybody that's wanting to be in social media, you need to have videos on your profile, on your TikTok, somewhere where you are talking.
Yeah.
I would even welcome it if somebody decided to apply for a job and they just actually sent me almost like an audition tape in a weird way. I would love that if somebody sent in a video and they were like, "Hi Erica, this is me. Just want to tell you a bit about myself. This is what I've done, blah, 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 blah." If somebody's actually just talking to you, then that's kind of great because then it shows you what they're going to be like. But if you don't have a video on your social media where you're actually talking to the camera, that is the first thing you should do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think this translates to other jobs as well? Because obviously in social media, it makes sense. What about other fields?
I feel like it depends. I feel like you should always have, like, your personal brand kind of needs to always match your job. If that makes sense. And your personal social media will always speak to your dynamic within the potential of a team that you're hired into.
Yeah.
So let's say you're really an extrovert and that really shows on your page. Odds are you're probably going to be great in like marketing or sales, right? But I think for things like engineering, computer science, I think that matters less.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really matter then what you get up to in your spare time. And honestly, you're probably better off just being private.
Are you sure, though? Because recently I was thinking about this in terms of, let's say, dermatologists, right?
Oh, yeah, dermatologists, yeah.
Yeah, but if you think of even a lawyer, would I hire a famous lawyer that I've seen talking about law and their cases, obviously not disclosing anything,
Yeah.
but, like, things that might interest me? Or would I hire someone I've never seen before?
I would probably hire a lawyer I've never seen before.
Really?
What about you?
That's interesting. I would hire someone I've seen all over the place.
Oh, that's very interesting.
That is interesting.
See, I would go based on the recommendation of a friend for that. But
Depends what friend. What if my friend doesn't know shit?
Well, that's true. I'd probably consult like a friend of a friend that probably got like a friend of a friend out of something, maybe. I'd be like, "Hey, remember that DUI that you got when you were 16 and like you had your license suspended? Who did that again?"
I mean, to be honest, yeah.
Like, that's what I would care way more about, not like what's on their social media. Unless they're bragging about how great they are.
To be honest, I don't know. I do look at personal brands a lot in the sense that maybe I'm biased, professionally biased, but I will buy something that I've seen more often. Or I will listen to a person better if they have a personal brand. If like a dermatologist or a doctor or a lawyer or a policeman has 200K followers and I've seen them and they sound interesting, I'm more likely to be like, okay, you're quite all right.
Yeah, to be honest, I think about this because so my plastic surgeon back in Portland, because I broke my nose, I had my nose fixed. Dr. Kim, shout out, he's the best. But I think about this because when I went to see Dr. Kim, I found him because I have very specific things that I wanted from my plastic surgeon. I wanted to be a guy, I want him to be Asian because I'm half Asian. And
Why
I knew,
a guy?
Because I just feel like a guy as a plastic surgeon would actually be more brutally honest about your appearance. And I also, like, I don't know, this is probably a bad bias, but I always thought that, like, if a woman, like, she might lie to you and not make you as pretty as you possibly could be.
But
And
I feel like maybe also with a man, this is again biased, I'm not sure. They have like the male gaze, right? So they're gonna try and make you hotter.
Hot, yeah, exactly. And I was like, ultimately, I just think, like, I gotta make you look better. So that's what I went for. But that was like my on paper thing. And this is kind of before the days of like social media really being prevalent. It was kind of at the start. But he was very, very, very good. And then he started his own practice. And now social media was coming in. And then he started promoting on social media. And now he's got like quite a big following on Instagram. And he really showcases like his personality. He showcases his family life behind the scenes, like other people he works with professionally, like people that do fillers, all this sort of stuff.
I think it makes someone more human.
It does make somebody more human.
More trustworthy.
Yeah, and I like it when people like doctors, especially if you're like a plastic surgeon or if you're dealing with anything really personal. I like it when they show their personality and when they're funny. So I think he's a really interesting example because he's somebody that I went to just based on like qualifications and what I was after. But the way that he was in person, I can almost see from when I met him, all were like, yeah, this guy would do well on social media. And now he has a great social media. So.
Interesting. What about something like Selling Sunset? You know how they obviously have a real agency.
Yeah.
Would you go to them or would you not? I think I don't like their personal brand enough to go to them. But if I love their
I
personal
like
brand,
Ryan. Is it Ryan Serhant? He's the one on $1 Million Listing New York.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like him.
So would you go?
I would definitely go to him.
That's what I'm
I'd be like,
saying.
throw an insane, but I think that's because it matches my personality. So I'd be like, throw a massive open house in my insane place. I'm like, yeah, let's
But
get
isn't
sold.
that the thing then? You align yourself with personal brands or like
Yes.
digital brands that are like, for actual businesses, brand identities. But that's literally what I'm saying. Like with Selling Sunset, it's a little bit too dramatic for who I want to be in that field of my life. Well, $1 Million Listing aligns with me more.
Yeah.
So then I would definitely go. But if I've never seen this dude before, maybe I wouldn't.
I think ultimately what we're basically getting at is that the way that social media functions is it's a way for you to find things that you like.
Yeah.
And you obviously follow brands that you either see as aspirational or exactly like you, in the same way you follow people that are aspirational or like you. So all that like putting yourself out there on social media really does is it narrows down and allows people to find you and decide whether they like you and they relate to you. And yeah.
So I do think that in all fields, well, of course, with some fields you have to be way more careful what you put out there. And
But like
you
a
have
fun accountant. I would
Yeah.
totally love to work with a fun
I've
accountant.
never met a fun accountant.
My friend Dominique. Hi, Dom. My friend Dom. She's an accountant.
Is she a fun accountant?
She's a fun accountant.
Really?
I love her.
All
Yeah.
accountants that I've met were very cranky.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be great to like see a fun
I
accountant?
would love to see a fun accountant.
I think everyone should have a personal social media regardless of what field you're in, just because I feel like you will have an edge over other people
I think so
if
too.
you have one and if you show your personality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But obviously, I would be a little bit careful in the sense that if I'm trying to be an accountant, I wouldn't really put weird stuff out there, like about me partying or whatever. While in social media, you totally could.
Yeah.
So you just have to align yourself with what it is you want your personal brand to be. You can be an accountant who parties, but maybe me as your client, I don't want to see you drunk. I want you to look at numbers.
But then maybe their target audience for clients are people that want a fun drunk accountant.
I don't know, man. I think that's far-fetched. Who wants a drunk accountant? Do you want one?
I don't know, maybe they could be a little fun.
I think if we're gonna go to jail.
Yeah,
fraud.
I do think you would go to jail for fraud. That would be, yeah.
So yeah, I don't think so.
Well, so do you think, because I've been thinking about this, do you think that as like the baby boomers and what are they called? Gen Y? Gen X. And as Gen Xers leave the workforce and we become like the top of the workforce, do you think that it's going to become more and more relaxed? Like whether people are allowed to have social media or not? Because
I think yes and no. Yes, in terms of I think the days where posting a bikini picture is gonna harm your career are gone.
and I'm very happy about that.
Me too, because I don't understand why you wouldn't be allowed to be in a bikini.
And I've always noticed, like, guys, regardless of their field, they actually get praised. Like, if a guy works in any sort of field and he has a six-pack, best believe that is on his Instagram. He is putting it everywhere.
It will be everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So
it will
like,
be their only picture,
Yeah.
but it will be there.
yeah, exactly. Versus like girls are just out there trying to survive, and we just post on. And it's just like, oh,
I mean, to be honest, I've recently even experienced this. I feel that men look at social medias differently. In a sense, you can be in a bikini and it can be a very innocent, non-sexual post, and they still be like, "Oh, look at this nudity." Well,
Yeah.
obviously, recently had this, which is gross. Which is we're trying to get away from this, but I do think that that's still going to be quite a thing.
yeah.
And I think that being
But do you think though that it's kind of going to matter less because as our generation becomes more and more in charge, I think women are going to be more and more in charge than
Why
men.
do you think so?
I think that is because, frankly, I think women are doing really well in the world now. We've got a lot more discipline. I think that gradually as well, maybe not with our generation, but maybe the next generation after us, I feel like we're getting better at supporting each other as well. So I think the more that women support each other and stop and realize like there's more than enough space for us, and by helping each other out, we're, you know, everybody's being lifted up. It's no longer like it's me or you getting this job because we're the only two women fighting for this job. It becomes like, okay, well, it's better that it's one of us than, you know, the
I
guys that fly.
like this thought process, but I do think it's different in every industry. 'Cause
I do
feel
think
like
it is.
in a lot of industries that are still very male-dominated.
Well, even in this one.
Yeah, I mean, even
What's your
in-
stat about Dan?
Okay, this is my favorite fun fact.
There are more agency owners named Dan than female agency owners. Shout out to all the Dans. Like, isn't that insane? There's literally more people named Dan who own a social media agency.
But you know why that is?
80%, hold on, 80% of people working in social media are women.
And it's probably even more, it's definitely more than 80% of influencers are women. Like, but you know what that is? It's because guys hate to see women doing well at something. So what they want to cash it.
I think that's changing now, and
No, but guys love to see an opportunity. So they're so good at seeing, oh, women are making a lot of money in this. I could never make money, you know, selling fitness supplements. So what am I going to do? I'm going to manage the women that can sell fitness supplements.
but this is what I mean. I think that as women, we have to take up more space, and we have to be like, okay, if Dan can do it, and Dan number 2 and Dan number 3, surely you can do it too. And I think that's also having a little bit more balls and just going for it and just trying and lifting each other up and not being competitive, which I think is still the truth. A lot of times, especially in male-dominated industries, women see like, oh, there's only 2 women here, so likely they are not going to take too many women, so then it's me against her. Well, that's not like that.
Yeah, and I think, I would like to think that as like more women come in and things like that, and as so the older generation go out of things, that having a personal social media will be seen as more of a positive.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we have an entirely female team, so.
Yeah, and men, that's the other thing. I feel like guys look down on social media in general because, A, guys aren't really that good at it. And then they...
It's cringe.
And then they really just think that, like, if you have social media and you tried it, that you must just really care about yourself.
Obsessed.
Yeah.
You're so cringe. You always want to take videos. Just be in the moment.
Yeah. Do you know how many...
Another makeup video? You have nothing better to do? Ew.
Do you know how many times... Actually, do you ever think about that? Do you ever think that, like, let's say you want to work with the head of a company, for instance, and he looks at your personal social media, for instance, you as an agency owner, do you think that men looking to work with the agency might look at your social media and think,
And my thirst traps.
and think like, I don't know.
To be honest, yeah. I mean,
This is something she never thought about before.
I think that I like working with companies that are a little bit more modern, that think towards the future. And if my personal brand for some reason is offensive to them or too much, or
So it's also aligning with businesses.
exactly, I wouldn't want to work with them in the first place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Especially because obviously if you're going to be working with influencers and you think that a person cannot be trustworthy and credible and post a bikini picture, you got it all wrong.
Oh, I actually remember this. So now thinking back on it, I remember when I applied for the job, and I remember I thought, like, I was like, oh, is this legitimate? Is this a legitimate influencer agency?
So social media was bad at the time.
And so I went and I looked at the social media, and I was like, I don't know. Is it legit? It's like, I don't know. Is it legit?
Fine. Our social media's had a glow up since UK.
But then I remember I also obviously looked at your social media because I was like, oh, okay, I'm like, if an influencer agency social media, like it didn't really matter what it looked like, but I'm like, okay, what kind of influencers is she as the head of the agency probably going to be picking?
Clearly likes
what does her social media look like? And I was like, oh yeah, it's a vibe. I was like, she seems cool. I was like, okay.
So again, having a personal brand is so important.
Yeah, but you didn't have any talking videos. That was back in the day.
I do now. There's always room for improvement.
Actually, I always think that's a big thing as well. People don't realize that, like, if you go on LinkedIn, I did this actually with every job I applied for. I went and I looked at every single hiring manager or, like, the boss or whoever was the current social media person, whatever it was. I went and I looked at all of their Instagrams. I looked at all of their social media.
That's interesting.
Because I wanted to know, if I'm working for you, what kind of person are you?
Yeah.
And people always forget that it goes both ways.
That's very true, actually. That's very, very true. Do you think it's going to be difficult for diversity, though?
In what sense?
In a sense that obviously the personal brands or like profiles that you like are probably somehow either inspirational to you or kind of like you. So if I see someone who, I don't know, wakes up at 5 a.m. and, I don't know, only eats a keto diet and never has a drop of alcohol and, I don't know, reads 100 books, well, I think that's really cool. Yeah. I could not imagine myself having anything in common with them.
But I think it's different when it's a business because you actually want in a business, or you should, in order to have a successful business, you actually want to have people that are really different from you.
I think
they bring different perspectives as well. So as long as they are doing their personal brand really well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think from my perspective, obviously everyone thinks about this differently. I think it's really good when people have the same core values, but are very different. And I think that if you look at our team, everyone kind of has similar core values. But
we're all born in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. In a sense, but we all have a different style. We all have a different aesthetic. We all have different likes, even.
Yeah, that is actually really interesting because I think we all actually have very defined personal styles.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the big things is you want to go on somebody's social media or you want to see them in person and you want to be like, yeah, that person knows themselves. And that's actually the most important thing.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that it's easy for somebody to see that you know yourself, you understand yourself, and you're very good at communicating that. And I think that's all that social media really enables you to do is to show how well you know yourself.
I think my knee's bleeding.
I know, I noticed that. Oh my god,
my knee's bleeding. I was like, what the fuck is blood on my knee?
I was noticing that as well.
I was like, it's really fucking weird.
Oh. I was literally looking at it. I was
also looking and I was like, is that blood? Is that wine?
I was like, I think she didn't wash her dress.
No, I did. So it was ironed freshly today. I will have you know. So I was literally like, it's really weird.
You need to take that to your dry cleaner that's got a strong personal brand in dry cleaning. Oh my gosh, this is making me think about though. You know what I love? I love those like takeaway places, like that Indian food place or that Chinese dumpling place that have the really funny people that make those great TikToks. True. I love those places. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, so just, I guess, to summarize it, how would you go about building a personal brand in a sense that if you want to apply for jobs, you don't want to be an influencer, you don't want to build a huge audience, you just want to work in, a creative job, being either a social media manager or working in an agency that has anything to do with beauty, fashion, media.
I think no matter what industry you want to work in, you need to identify who the leaders are of that industry. So you need to look at who are the most well-known people in that industry and look and study their social media, figure out what things you have in common with them, how they execute showing off those qualities that have made them successful, and then basically just copy that for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, put your twist on it, but do it in that same way. right?
Yeah.
Or identify characteristics that you think are important to your job and to your industry, and make sure that when you go on your profile, it's very clear that you have those characteristics. Like, sure, your styling could be different or whatever, but if you need to be kind of a fun, sociable person, show that you have friends. Like, it can be really basic. It doesn't need to be like, oh, you've got this perfectly curated feed. It could be as easy as, like, have photos with your friends.
Yeah.
Have, photos that are at cool restaurants, right? Like, if you're shooting to do something really high-end, for instance, right? Like, maybe that's not something you grew up around. Like, go and take a nice photo at a nice restaurant, for instance. Go get a drink at a nice restaurant. Like, it's almost like saying dress yourself for the job that you want.
I agree.
Put together an Instagram feed and a social media for the job that you want.
It's basically like manifesting it.
Yeah, literally just look at other people and let's say you want to work in banking, for instance. Look at people that are well known, and you can Google it on TikTok or whatever. Google people in finance, and then look at the people that are doing really well, and then just mimic that, because odds are finance pros want to hang out with other finance pros that look like them. And and people that like work in beauty or whatever, they want to hang out with people that look like they know a thing or two. Yeah. So just copy people, kind of.
And I also think that copy people, have your own personal twist to it. That's very important. You don't want to be a copy paste of someone who already exists. That's very important. But also, this sounds very obvious, but do not use outdated filters.
Oh my God.
Fonts. And you'd be surprised how many people apply to social media or creative job that still use, the little dog filter from Snapchat in 2012.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things, especially in social media, is you need to portray confidence.
Yeah.
No matter what, post with confidence, post yourself looking confident, post yourself looking happy, whatever it is.
And don't be afraid to look a bit silly.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to look silly. And in a weird way, you kind of have to post like you're an influencer if you want to be in social media.
I agree.
And also, it gets you a lot of great access to free things once you're in the industry.
I mean, the PR is giving. The PR is giving.
The PR is absolutely giving. And who doesn't want more PR?
Yeah, for sure. I do.
And you know what? The other thing, too, is that you never know. Let's say you land your dream job or whatever, right? If you keep up posting on that social media and you can put yourself out there as an expert in the field, all of a sudden, you can jump so many levels on a ladder as well. Yeah. You could go from being an entry-level person, but then you're putting out information and people are taking you seriously. All of a sudden, you've got funding for your own business.
Yeah.
So social media is an incredible tool. It's not something to ever discount, and it 100%. Can move you places. 100%. Yeah. Or you can become an influencer yourself, and then you just make a bunch of money doing that.
Wow. Cheers to that.
Yeah.
You look like you could use a drink.